Hi folks, Rick here. Today we're going to talk about setting up your suspension, getting your front end all alignment and stuff like that. If you're just doing an annual maintenance maybe and looking for toe-in, I've got a special just toe-in video only. Check that out. You can just go through that. No sense going through this whole setup procedure if you're just needing toe-in. However, if you've replaced your A-arms or something like that, put on new tie rod or a different front end suspension, whatever, you're going to need to do a whole alignment and setup on there. So I'm going to kind of go through everything. I'm not a suspension expert here whatsoever, so there's a zillion things to go on with suspension. I'm going to give you some of the basics, but if you just follow the basics, you can make some huge improvements in yourself. And so this is something here that you can do yourself. You don't need anybody special to do. Obviously, a suspension expert's going to do better than you, but you can do this yourself and make your improvements a lot better. So what I'm going to cover today is getting your front end aligned. So I'm making sure it's in alignment with itself. Going to do a toe-in. I'll show you quickly how to do a toe-in, even though I've already covered that. I'm going to show you how to adjust the caster of your bike. And I'm going to adjust the camber as well, and then we'll kind of go from there. So first off, let's kind of discuss some of these things here. So you know, to get your wheels in alignment, what we want to do on this thing is you want your front wheels and your back wheels to be perfect in alignment like that. You don't want one flat and the other one tilting this way. What that'll give you is your bike will go down the road kind of squirrely a little bit on you. So you want them perfectly in alignment there. And so when you've adjusted your tie rods out, if you broke a tie rod or something like there, when you put them back together, you got to go through that alignment process. Toe-in is once you get your alignment there, you want your front end here, your front wheels here, just slightly toed in closer at the front than they are to back. You want that about you know, 1/8 to 1/4 inch, or 0 to 1/4 inch. I set it about 1/8 off on there. The next thing here we're going to go through is camber. Camber is the tilt of your wheel. So if this is a front wheel here, if it's positive camber and I'm facing forward to you, the wheel is like this. So the bottom of the wheel's in, the top of the wheel's out. You want negative camber, the top is in, the bottom is out. And so what that does there is when you go around a corner, your suspension flexes and your tire flexes. And what you want to do is when you go around the corners really hard is you want your tire to be flat. And so like on woods racing, what I do typically, or even motocross, that's typically negative camber. So when your tire flexes, if it starts out like this and it flexes, it'll flex. And now it's flat, you'll get the maximum traction. That'll get you in and out of the corners. So that's kind of what camber is. What the optimum camber is for you, I don't know that, so spend some time doing some adjustments. It's probably, you know, if you don't know what to adjust, you don't want to do it, set it at 0, you're probably good. I'm going to start off with mine at about -1. I might go up to -2 and just kind of keep progressing there, see how it goes. I need some really good turning on that. Next thing is caster. Caster is a little bit of a odd thing. What that is your alignment of your spindle with your A-arms. So 0 caster here, if your A-arm here holding your wheel, you've got your spindle. If it's perfectly 100% perpendicular where your wheel's turning absolutely horizontal, that is 0 caster. Positive caster there is when it tilts backwards. So your top of your spindle is towards the back end of the bike versus the bottom spindle is toward the front. So what that's going to do here is if you tilt this thing back like that, that's going to cause your front wheel to have to swing up like this. So instead of just going perfectly perpendicular or horizontal, it's having to do an arc. And what that does there, since it's doing like that, it's kind of like those old choppers back in the 70s, if you ever seen any of those things. What that does is really slow your steering down. So if you're doing a lot of high-speed desert racing, not a lot of tight corners, and you're really going flat out, you want your a little bit of positive camber, or caster, excuse me. What that's going to do is going to give you a little bit more stability at those high speeds. You're going to get, you know, your bump steer is going to go away. It's going to be a lot better to ride, probably a lot more enjoyable. You're still going to be able to turn. You're just not going to be able to get in and out of tight stuff super quick. And so again, everything's a little trade-off, but typically you're going to want positive caster if you're doing a lot of high-speed stuff. If you're doing a lot of really tight woods racing, which I am, you want negative caster, and so that's bringing the top of the spindle forward like this, and that's going to do, instead of this up and down, it's going to be, you're going to be pointing down at the ground. That's going to give you a lot faster steering. It's going to allow you to get in and out of the trees a lot quicker, but you're going to suffer some high-speed stability there. So I don't do a lot of high speed. It's generally short distances when I do. So this is something here, if you have caster adjustable, like mine, I've got Hausers. They're quick and easy. You can make simple, quick adjustments to them there in a couple minutes. So if you got a high-speed track, you can adjust it a little bit positive. If it's a more slower, you can adjust it more negative. Or again, just set it and forget it, whatever's up to you. So a lot of suspension don't have either caster or camber. Your stock suspension typically doesn't. You bolt it on, you're good to go. Some of the suspension just has the camber, which is the tilting in and out. Again, some of your race suspension has both, and so I'm going to cover those with you. So those are kind of the basics on setting it up and what you want, what the settings are right for you. Again, that's going to be dependent on where you ride, what you ride, and what you like best. And it's one of those things there, you start out with something and you test it. And so the best thing you want to do here on any of this stuff, you're doing your suspension, tuning your shocks, what have you, the best thing that you can do is just write down everything you do. So start off right where you are today, write down all your settings. Write them down on just on a nice line format going across, put down all your settings, all your shock adjustments, everything you are. You can goof up. If you make a bad adjustment and something gets worse, you simply just go right back to where you were. Once you put it back to where it was, it's going to work just like it was, no problem there. And so adjusting your suspension, once you get it all set up, is just like going to the eye doctor. Is it better A? Is it better B? And that's all you do. Make one adjustment at a time. So if you're going to be out there, you want to adjust your caster, do your caster first. Don't make multiple things at once, otherwise you're not going to know what went good, what went bad. One adjustment can affect the other. So if you're adjusting your caster, you want to recheck, and recheck your toe in and those kind of things. You want to check, or especially your camber, side to side, you're going to want to readjust your toe in. So each one can have a little impact on each other. So make one adjustment at a time. Go out and test ride it. Is it better? Is it not? If it is, that's good. Maybe make another adjustment. Now is the new adjustment better than the old one? Just keep doing that. Small things at a time. A lot of times for me, it's difficult to tell if it's better. So a lot of times I'll make an adjustment. Well, I may or may not notice it hasn't got anything bad. So maybe I'll leave it there. Maybe try a different adjustment, or I just got to stop, and then that's good for now. And then it takes time. So as I go racing and as I go out practicing on the bike, I just kind of watch things. I can't duplicate every single circumstance, but sometimes you're out there, something happens, and you'll notice, aha, boy, that really sucked. I need to work on that. The compression was off of my shock, or my steering's too tight, or I was really high speed and the bike's really nervous there. Maybe I got to readjust my camber. I adjusted it too far, negative. So those are the things. They take a lot of time. If you're not an expert, again, not being an expert, it's tough to tell what your bike's doing. So that's another thing. But just small adjustments, write them down. You can always go back to where you started. And that's really the trick. So with that, let's go ahead and get started here. And we'll get the bike set up here to where it's in alignment. And then we'll go from there. All right, so first off here, from the alignment, what we want to do is make sure your handlebars are straight. Now, a lot of this alignment stuff here you can honestly do, just by eyeballing it. These things aren't that perfect. They're not that refined where everything's got to be dialed in perfectly. But what I've done here, as you can see here, is I fastened some rope to my tie bars up to my handlebars. What I've then done is on my grab bar back here, just marked a little mark on the center. You can kind of see it there. And let me get this tape measure out here. What I've done now is I just basically measure from my handle grip there all the way back to the mark here. I'm about 48 3/8. Do the same as the other side. When those two are equal, my handlebars are straight. I also just eyeball it, again, just to make double check that everything's perfect condition. And what we want to do now is do our alignment. Now, a couple different ways here that you can do this. Probably the best way is to get a straight edge from the rear wheel to the front, and then check to make sure they're in perfect parallel position. So you just run a straight edge from the back here, one off the front, make sure they're in parallel. That way the front and the back's in alignment. I don't have a straight edge that long. You need like a bar or like a piece of square tubing or something like that, or a really straight board. I don't happen to have anything. Don't feel like running it up to the store at the moment. Might do it later on. We'll see how this goes here. But what I'm going to show you there is a different way of doing it here. What we're going to do is basically measure from the inside of our rim at about halfway and measure to a fixed point and get some measurements and do them on both sides. They should be equal. Just to double check and make sure there's nothing out of right. I'm going to double check the front and the back as well and compare on both sides here. So first off here, just to take a quick measurement. So now that I've got the video started, we should have everybody and their brother start to drive around. So I am sitting from the inside of the rim here to this. I'm going about the center of this bolt. In fact, let me just go ahead and do to this grease zerk. That's a little bit easier. I am right there at 13.5 inches. If I come around here and do it on the other side here, I am exactly, I'm just slightly under, or slightly over. I'm about 9/16 of an inch. So what I got to do is on this side right here is I'm going to make an adjustment to make it go, make the back side go out and make the inside go in. So I'm going to take my 14 millimeter on this side right here. I'm just going to make sure all my flats here are absolutely flat. This one here is not flat, so I'm going to make it flat. See where that gets us. So I'm sitting here now at just a crack under 13.5. I mean, that's like right on the line. Again, and we're checking alignment here. We're not doing the toe in yet. The toe in we'll do later. And that's, Jesus, that's just about right on. So right now they're both setting about perfect. Just to double check, I'm going to do a measurement off the back to this other grease zerk, just to make sure. I am about 15 and 1, 2, 3/16, 3/8, 15 and 3/8. Try this one right here. It's 15 and 3/16. So let me get my glasses on here so I can actually see a little bit better, and we'll check it again here. Hold on. Okay, now that I got my glasses on here, I can see a little bit better. So I measured these again here, front to back. I'm right here at 13.5. Right, just to double check the back here. I am at 15 and 3/16. And 15 and 3/16. So I'm right where I need to be. Okay, here, to adjust our caster here, these are a set of Hauser long travel A-arms here. They've got this, what they call a slide cast system. It's a little easily adjustable caster angle. Again, what this does here is it allows your to adjust your basically your tie rod position here, or your spindle. You can either move this one backwards to make it positive. You can move it this way forward to make it negative. And it's pretty simple to do on these ones. Everyone's going to be different, so I'm not going to really show you on this one. But on this one here, you kind of use, it's got a jam nut. Basically, just push this back in, and then you twist it. And that it's basically a cam system there on how you do it there. So it's a little difficult to see here, but right here, you see a little bit different clear. That's where it's currently set. It's currently set at -1. It's pushing my tie rod here forward. So I've got the same on the other thing. So I'm going to set this one back here, and that's really about it. So, but at the track or whatever, when you're done, it's very easy just to loosen this up. Again, you push this in. You can just turn it a notch this way, turn it a notch that way, then tighten the jam nut up and go out and test it again. So there's not much to this one here. You just want to make sure both sides are the same. I've double checked, and that's it for the Castor. It's up to the testing now. So let's move on to the next port. All right, folks, so we're going to adjust our camber right now. That's the tilt out and tilt in of the wheel. When it's tilted out like this, it's positive. Tilted in, it's negative. What you need on this thing is you need a square. You want some level concrete. And basically what you want to do is on the center of your wheel, best you can, slide it up against there. So right now I'm hitting against the top. And if you look here on the bottom here, I can almost get a finger. That means the top of this thing is like this. That's a lot of positive camber. I'm actually looking for negative camber. So how to measure this thing here is you want to pick a point on your wheel and measure up, about the center here. And so as I look at this side, unfortunately it's on my side, it's about 17 inches here is where I want to measure. And what we got here, I'll hold this up here. Let me get up here so make sure you can see this thing. This is a little chart. This is just a, let me get this a little bit of light on this thing here. So this is a little chart here. You can kind of see off to the left there is how much vertical inches. So you can see 17, and you go across on the degrees there at 17 inches. I need to be at that 0.593 to go to 2 degrees. That's kind of where I want to start. So this recommendation here, cross-country racing 1 to 2 degrees, motocross, which is a little bit more speedier, more turns, 3 to 4 degrees. Again, this is just ballpark to get you in there. You got to go play with it. I'm going to go with the 2 degrees. So I need to go, I should have a gap at the top of my wheel of about 0.59 inches. And so that's what I'm going to look at. Obviously here, there's some math involved. You know your geometry. You go up 17, you go by 2 degrees. It'll probably calculate that distance for you. I'm just going to use this table. So let's go ahead here and we'll loosen up my upper adjuster and we'll get this thing in. All right. So what I got to do on mine here is I just kind of back off on my jam nut on my upper adjuster here, my upper ball joint adjuster. I'm going to back it off here, being careful. This has got a Castor adjuster. I want to make sure I don't do that. Now I'm going to tighten it because I want to pull this, I want to pull the wheel in here. So I'm going to get my socket, which now no longer fits. And so I got to go track down a 24 millimeter wrench somewhere. So hold on. All right, so I got my wrench here just in case anyone's interested. 24 millimeter, it's pretty darn close to 15/16 of an inch. That's the wrench I got. Let me go ahead and tighten this in. I'm bringing this top in a little bit here for us. That's the same as that jam nut. Wouldn't that be nice? Holy crap. Well, I'm going to be carrying this wrench with me. Okay, so I'm still positive. Quite a bit of a way to go here, it looks like. Again, once you get this going here, you're going to want to make sure your bike's set at ride height, all that stuff. I still got some more of that stuff to do. I'm going to need to get someone out here to help me measure that. But you want to make sure everything's sitting level and we're good to go on that. Otherwise, that could all impact these. So I'm just getting really close here. All right, so let me take a quick measurement here. I'm gonna use my little calipers here. Make sure I'm in the center against the tire. Sorry, here I got to use the back side here. All right, so what's that saying there? I am at, I'm only at about around the 0.3 of an inch. So I got a little bit farther to go here. All right, that's just a little bit crack under 0.5 an eighth. So I'm going to keep after this thing, get the side in, do the other side. Since this is the very first time I'm doing this, what I'm going to probably end up doing is give everything a once over, then go back and check, because if something is way off, it could impact the other. And so, this camber was way off here. I'm suspect that it didn't change my alignment a little bit, so I'm gonna go ahead and double check that once I get this a little bit better, and then we'll also double check ride height and come back one more time and check this thing here. So yeah, let me just put the finishing touches on this one, and I'll get to the other side, and that should get us a lot better where we need to be. All right, folks, just switched over to the other side here to do my camber. So again, I'm supposed to be like 0.598. Again, I check dead center of my wheel, making sure I'm ground is flat, and use my little gauge here. I'll do right at my 17-inch mark. Just push it in. Try to push it in. Go, take my measurement. I'm looking for about 0.598, and I am right at 0.6. So I'm going to leave it there. That's really close enough to me. Within a hundredth of an inch, pretty darn close. So that gets me right at the 2 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and start off there. I thought about doing 1. I'm going to go ahead and just start off with 2. I struggle with the corners, so I think that's going to help me. So that's it. That's how you do your camber adjustment, which is the bow in and out. Next thing we need to do on the list here is to adjust our toe in. So let's get set up for that. Okay, folks. Now, last thing here we got to do is adjust our toe in. Again, I've already got a video on this one, but it's pretty simple to do. what I do is I strap a couple of boards on either side of my wheels there. You want to make sure they're sitting halfway up on the wheels. So I've got them measured here. I'm 22 inches tall, so I've got them measured 11. Make sure they're 11, on the same height up, front and rear, and on both sides. That way when you do a measurement, it's the same way. But what we want to do now is just take a measurement. Again, I like to shoot for about 1/8. And so when I come over here and I measure, I'm at just a crack over 47 inches on the front. We want this to be narrower, so I need to be about a crack over 47 and 1/8. When I go do the back, I'm gonna crisscross here, and I am right there, 47 and 1/8. I had already made some adjustments on this thing. But all you do on this thing again is if your wheels are too far toe in, you want to shorten your A-arms or your tie rods. That'll pull the back end in, the front out, and you just keep adjusting till you get them the same. Very, very fine adjustments. If you make 1/2 a turn on both sides, that could be sometimes, I didn't really measure it, but it moves it a long ways, a lot longer than you think of. It just takes some of these things here. I was trying to get in 1/4 inch. I'm not even 1/2 a turn. I'm like, a couple degrees is what's making the adjustments on this thing. So that's that. So now we have got our alignment done. We've got our caster set at -1. We've got our camber in and out set at -2. Our toe in set at an 1/8 inch toe in. And so last thing I want to do here is just discuss the ride height. So let me get repositioned. Okay, so ride height here, again, there's kind of a rule of thumb on this thing on how to adjust it. But the exact ride height, like anything else, is preference. Depends on your bike, depends on how big your tires are, type of bike, type of riding you do. So first thing you got to do here, and I can't do this because it takes 2 people, you need to get on it. Your bike needs to be all together, obviously. Get on the bike where you're in normal riding conditions. Roll it backwards and forward a little bit to make sure the wheels and the suspension are settled. Bounce up and down on it a little bit. And then when it's all settled, then stay on the bike and have someone measure it. Right here in front of the foot pegs, you measure down here to the bottom of the frame. And then up here toward the front, I put that back up where it was at. Right back up here at the front of the frame here, you do a measurement the same way. What you want is the front to be about 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch higher than the rear. That's kind of just the standard. Now, if you've got a lot larger, if your bike came with a lot larger front wheels and rear wheels, it may be different, but that's kind of what you're shooting for, 1/4 to 3/4 of an inch. The actual ride height, how far up and down, really is dependent on what you like to do there. So obviously the lower your bike sits, the lower center of gravity, the easier it is to corner. But if you're going over rocks, you obviously don't want it low. You're in mud, you don't want it low because you'll just get stuck. You'll just smash your bottom in, so that way you want to leave it up. So it really depends on your riding style. If you're doing motocross, flat tracking, something like that, you can get away going really low. If you're trail riding, doing some GNC racing, maybe some desert racing there where you're a lot bigger rocks, you're going to want the thing a little higher. So that's just a preference. It's simple to adjust there. If you want to adjust it, you have your shocks need to have adjustable preloads. You simply just, if you want to raise it up, you adjust your preload stiffer. That'll put more spring on it. Lift your front end, lift your back end up, however you want to do like that. That's really the set on there. So I'll adjust this here a little bit later on for myself. I'll get someone out there to help me. But that's it. I think here, I'm going to give you a quick tip here on how to adjust some shocks. here as well. Then we'll wrap this suspension setup. So let me get repositioned again. All right, folks, I'm going to give you a quick primer on how to adjust your shocks as well. This is one of my old ones here. First of all, your shocks have got to be adjustable. These ones are stock ones that have been revalved off a 2018 Yamaha Raptor. On the bottom of your shock is typically your rebound screw. Up on the top here, you've got this tiny, there's a one here in the middle, real tiny screwdriver. It's for your low speed. This bigger one here, red one on the outside, is actually high speed. So this has high speed and low speed compression. Not all of them have that. So the trick to this thing here to get started, first and foremost, is figure out where you're starting from. So you want to take each one of these settings on all shocks and twist them in until they just start to seat. When you're doing that, count the number of clicks. So you just click, 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 all the way in. If you count 10, that's 10 clicks. Write that down, then back it back out 10 clicks, you're right where you were. You want to write each setting down on your entire suspension. So we've already wrote down our camber, wrote down our caster. We're going to write down our ride height when we get that, and we're going to write down each one of our shock settings. I've got my new ones I've actually already written down, but I'm going to, I got my rear ones written down. I got to put that, but you want to put them all on one sheet on one line, all those adjustments. That gives you your starting point. You want to make sure your fronts are set the same. So if one happened to be 10 clicks, the other one's 11, back one out to 11 or adjust one into 10. You want to make sure they're identical. So again, you want to make, when you're adjusting these things, one adjustment at a time. So start with the front, start with the rear, start with compression, start with rebound, but only one at a time. So you might kind of determine what your bike's doing first to see which one you want to start with. So, you know, if something's not working at all, like maybe you're getting bucked quite a bit going off of jumps, that might be something you want to correct sooner rather than later. So maybe you want to start with that. If your bike is just bouncing everywhere, it's just really rough, that's something you certainly want to tackle. So we'll go ahead and start with that. So for example here, let's go ahead and we would assume we would start maybe with the front, and we'll start with the compression. And we'll start with the low speed. So low speed is where most of your shock is. That's going to give you the plushness. As you're going through corners, you're going over logs, you're hitting rocks. That's really what that is. You know, kind of coming into a jump, you're kind of doing that G out. It's kind of like that. Your high speed, if you have one, is really for those fast. The speed, low speed and high speed is how fast the shock goes, not how fast you're going on the bike. So if you are going pretty fast, or you know, and you just hit, maybe there's just a log on the road and you hit that, that's going to be a really fast jolt. That's going to be your high speed compression. But most things going to be tend to be in your low speed compression like that. Your high speed will catch you if you come off a jump and you miss the slope, you actually just hit flat ground. Your high speed is probably going to catch that one. If you actually hit the jump correctly and hit the down slope, your low speed is probably going to catch that one. So you just got to play with it a little bit. So again, there's all sorts of science in this thing, so I'm just going to give you the basics like everything else on how to get started. Again, if you write down your settings, you can always go right back to where you were. You never want to go about more than 2 clicks at any one time, is another rule of thumb there as well. So to do your compression there, let's just say your shock has 30 clicks on it maximum. You're sitting in the middle at 15. It's riding rough. So what you want to do there is back it out to where it would be 17 clicks and go out and ride it. Does it improve? Is it better A, better B? If it comes back and it's better, you like it, it's not giving any adverse effects, go out 2 more to 19. Just keep doing that until you get to the point where, holy cow, it's getting better, it's getting better. Now, well, it's hard to tell. Then maybe it's actually getting worse. Well, if it's getting worse, that's gone too far. Go back to your last adjustment. You might get to a spot there where it's hard to tell if it's getting better. That's a good spot to stop and go to the next spot. So typically, the compression one for me is a lot easier because that's your ride quality, and you can tell whether it's riding nice or not. So when you get to where you like it, stop at that one and then go ahead and move on to the back. I would probably go ahead and do compression on that one as well. Just either do compression first all at once, then do your rebound. But same thing with the back, get it to where you like it, go ahead and stop. Your rebound to me is the tougher one to do. It's a simple adjustment. It's difficult for me anyway to tell what the bike is doing. And so a simple way of doing it, the way I'll recommend it to you, and you can just play with it from there, is, first off, the rebound on a thing is how fast your shock, expands back out after it compresses. If it goes too fast, what's going to happen is, like when you come up a jump, you unload the suspension. The rear one, let's say, if it's too fast, it's going to want to spring out like this. It could cause you to buck. So you'll feel that the back end oftentimes wants to come up, maybe hit you in the seat of the pants. When you land, if your bike hits and bounces, a lot of times it might hit and bounce sideways and do one of these numbers. That's a good idea that your compression is set too fast. It's allowing it to spring back out too fast. You want to slow that down. The more difficult one is if it's too tight. So I'll give you an example of what it is. I can't really tell on this tight there, so I'll explain how to adjust it here in a minute. But if it's too tight, let's say you got 8 inches of shock travel. You go over a series of bumps. The first bump you hit compresses your shock 3 inches, so now you only got 5 inches left. Well, if it's really slow, the shock will start to expand again, and let's say it only goes out 1 inch, then it hits that second bump. Second bump compresses at 3 inches. So you went in 3, so that's a total of 5. You went back out 1, so now you're back at 4. Now you just compress 3 again. Now you're all the way up to, I think I've done the math on that one. But you're up in there about 5 inches total right now of 8. So now if it goes back out again, that's going to get you to 6th. That third bump you hit again, boom, you're bottoming out on that next thing. So that's actually called your shocks are packing up. They just start compressed and then it slowly comes back out. What happens, it just keeps doing this until it finally gets compressed, then you have nothing. That makes your bike ride really rough. That makes you think like your compression is too stiff because it's got a really rough ride to it, but it's actually not your compression. It is your stock, your shocks are packed up there from having the rebound too tight. So how to adjust this the way I did it, and I just done it, set it, and it's working good for me. But I will start adjusting out or speeding up the rebound until I start getting, noticing it was too fast. When I start feeling like the bike is kicking, going over jumps, or whoops or anything like that, or if it's starting to bounce after when I land on something, then I know I've gone too far. I will simply tighten it back up, screw the screw back in a couple clicks until that stops. So as soon as it stops doing the bouncing or the kicking to you, that's where I shut it off. So that way I know I'm at the maximum amount of speed that I can get without going too far. And so I could probably tighten it up a little bit more if I want, but this way I know I'm in a good spot. My shock shouldn't be packing up. That's difficult for me to tell. You're almost going to have to go over a set of whoops and have somebody film you while you do it and try to film your suspension, which is difficult to do. So that's really it on these shocks. Again, just use your compression for your smoothness. Again, this isn't something you can typically go out and do in a day. It's difficult to really duplicate all these scenarios. So a lot of times you make a small adjustment. If it's way off or you just get some new shocks, you can go out there and dial them in, get your compression set, adjust your rebound there to where it's not bucking on you, and you're at a good starting point. From that point there, you really need ride time. Go out and ride like you normally do. If you hit races, race a couple of races. When you're out there, you're going to start experiencing things that you just can't duplicate. That's going to tell you, aha, something's off. This thing, it's starting to bottom out too much. It keeps bottoming out. Well, if it's bottoming out now too much, you got your compression set to light. So you need to tighten it up a little bit on there. So there's just a lot of different stuff there. But again, it's all, is it better A? Is it better B? You don't need any experience to do it. Again, if you get it completely screwed up, turn it right back to where you started and you're back to square one. As I mentioned earlier, do one setting at a time when you're adjusting your shocks. Don't make a shock adjustment and then adjust your camber or caster either. Do one thing at a time. Write it down where you were, where you're going, and then test it. Then after you get done tested, if you like it, fine. Then go to the next one. If it's not, put it back to where it was and go try something different. So that's really it. That's how you set up your suspension. Again, I'm not an expert at all. Just learn by doing. Again, just the better A, better B. But it's such a simple thing. Anyone can do it. I can do it. You can do it. And you can make your bike 10 times better than it is right now. So if you just bought a new bike, it's new to you, you've got adjustable suspension, regardless of how much adjustables, maybe just your shocks only, you can go out there and make it a heck of a lot better than it is because it's not dialed in for you. And so you may not have to, if you got stock suspension, the chances of your shock being valved and sprung for you is pretty slim, but that's just the way it is. But in lieu of that, you still got plenty of adjustments you can make it to make it better for you the way you want to. When I first got my stock shocks, they were terrible, just rough riding. I spent a great deal of time tuning them in, substantially better. Increased my speed, the ride quality, just the jolting on myself, the safety factor, 10 times better just doing the simple adjustments on my stock shocks. Since that time, I had these ones revalved, and I've since just got some new ones long travel. So that's really it. So setting up your suspension is pretty darn easy if you just follow the basics. I think we went through everything. Post a note if you got some questions. Again, I'm not an expert on this thing. You just do, is it better A, better B, and go with your gut feel on that, and you should be in good shape. So that's all I got. If you like these videos and they provide any value to you, please subscribe. Like them, share them with your friends or what have you. But that's it. Let's get out there and do it.